Hey everybody, welcome to the March edition of Dinner with the Devs with Schell Games. We have a exciting hour for you. We're talking with some artists in the studio about what they do, how they got here, some of the tips along the way that they can share with you. So please, if you have any questions for them, put them in the live chat, and our live chat moderator will share them with us so we can get to them. Again, this is Schell Games. We're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're all working remote. We have some questions about that, so we'll be sure to answer that as well. And one of the questions that we are going to be talking about today is what continues to intrigue our game artists in the many different aspects of game art. And we're going to dive into some detail there. So before we go any further, let's introduce them. So we'll do, let's see, we'll do Kwame, then Greg, and then Justin. So Kwame, go ahead.
Hey everyone, my name is Kwamé Babb. I am a principal VFX artist at the studio.
Hi everyone, my name is Greg Mirles. I'm an advanced 3D artist at Schell Games.
Hi, and I'm Justin DeVore, and I am a senior artist at the studio, usually working in art direction.
Good stuff. So, and also before we jump into the conversation at the end, stay tuned to the end because we have some exciting announcements about some of our original games and how you have a chance to meet with our game dev team and even some of our senior members virtually. So stay tuned for those announcements. So before we dive into what game artist really means, what are some of the projects that you guys have worked on for Schell Games? So, Justin, we can start with you with your background. You kind of give it away, but go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the most recent one that I worked on is I did the art direction for Until You Fall. And before that, I guess the last one was Jedi Challenges. And before that, there's a whole slew of things going all the way back till 2006. And yeah, I mean, I've kind of touched on everything from location-based experiences to tablet stuff to web stuff. And yeah, last couple of years have really been VR focused.
How about you, Kwame?
Yeah, I actually worked with Justin on a lot of those projects. Funny enough. So yeah, I did of the projects that that the audience may know of. I worked on I Expect You to Die's First Class DLC. I also worked on Star Wars Jedi Challenges, and I did a lot of the VFX, most of the VFX for Until You Fall. Yeah, so and I've done a lot of work in VR, probably the last maybe 5 years. And I think for VFX, it started probably around 9 years ago. So a lot of the work that you guys know of is VFX.
And Greg.
I'm currently the lead 3D artist for I Expect You to Die. Previously, I worked on also the First Class DLC for the first I Expect You to Die game, and I got to do one lightsaber for Jedi Challenges, the Dark Star Challenges DLC, which was really exciting.
It's a very important part.
Yeah, it was Yoda's lightsaber.
Nice.
Ooh,
Nice.
good stuff. So, what does being a game artist mean to you? I mean, I feel like whenever I came into Schell Games and learning, more about what everybody does, it seems like it's so broad to me. And so, for you guys actually being the artist, I'd love to hear, how that term, means to you, or is that a term that you guys would call yourselves, or you call yourself something differently? So we can expand on that, and anybody can start.
Sure. I mean, to me, it's really about it's the sensory end of games, right? It's your audio and visual feedback, and in some cases, there's haptics and things like that too. But it is very broad. So there's all the various disciplines that I'm sure we'll be touching on at different points. But to me, it's really how do we get that experience directly into the player's head? How do we give feedback that the design requires to to get things across to the player? And how do we help visualize and provide audio feedback for the systems that the programmers have written, that kind of thing. It's really that extension of the experience.
Okay, I guess Justin knocked that one out of the park.
No, yeah,
it's very broad, very broad.
Yeah, no, it is broad. But it is, yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely agree with everything Justin said. There's an element of connectivity, right, that we're trying to, I think that designers are always trying to achieve, right, where they're always trying to kind of reach out to the player and say, hey, this is what our shared experience is going to be, and we're trying to enhance that. We're trying to, right, to solidify that in using all of those artistic means, right, shape, color, speed, size, contrast, right? We're trying to make sure you see the right thing, you look at the right thing. We're trying to evoke feelings, depending on what that is. So in a lot of ways, we study a lot of different things too, right? I mean, we study architecture, we study photography, we study movies, right? Because all of these things are doing the same thing, right? We're trying to evoke feelings, moods, and things like that, depending on what the moment is in the experience. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh,
A lot of
great.
trying to.
Go
Oh, sorry.
ahead, Greg. No, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say there's a lot of trying to make sure that people are interpreting the things that you are trying to say in your art is also a big challenge, and something that I think is really, really interesting. Some people might see something and think that it's scary, or some people might think that something is is almost like funny, but how do you convey those emotions through art is a big challenge that I feel like we are constantly trying to solve.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about that, just deviating a little bit, there's been a lot of different news coming out in the games industry about, or maybe journalists of the games industry is like, pay attention to sound, pay attention to audio, and why that is so important. So I would love to hear from you guys, because I mean, we've been apart for it's been a little over it's been a year and 2 weeks since we've been in the studio all together. So I haven't gotten a chance to pick your brains about this, but to that point, what is it about sound, or what is it about audio that can evoke different feelings? And to that point, why is it getting so much attention now? I felt that it was always something that people have paid attention to. So I don't know if it's just some revelation, some big time journals no, pay attention to sound, and everybody's like, oh no, yeah, let's pay attention to sound. So I'd love to hear your opinion.
Well, for I Expect You to Die, sound is so important, and we really tried to, I mean, the audio team, I didn't really have too much to do with it. I just got to see the amazing stuff that came in. But the amount of feedback that you get, and the amount of story that's told when you open a drawer and it creaks just the specific way, that tells such a story. And so I definitely feel like for games that are trying to establish a setting and a mood, audio is just so important for that. But definitely in I Expect You to Die too, the audio is one of the star actors for the game.
I mean, for Until You Fall, it's similar, right? In fact, it really drove the visual art style as well. I wrote a long blog post that I'm not going to fully repeat on this topic, but in short, we really kind of picked out what our soundtrack, our actual music was going to, what genre it was going to be. When we were trying to figure out what would work for this game. And we knew what the design was. We knew the kind of, frenetic sort of pace of the game. And so we went out looking for music that would kind of match and complement that well. Our project director, Dave Bennett, brought in a bunch of different possible genres, and synthwave was the one that really kind of stuck for all of us and kind of clicked and made us say, yeah, that really fits. And so from there, we started building concept art off of it and getting that just directly into the game with our existing like prototypes. And we just went from there. We started writing our own music with it. And it completely sets the mood for what the game is supposed to be. And then on the other side of the stuff, right, you know, as that was getting developed, there's all the in-game sound effects and, you know, feedback that you're getting when you're hitting things with your sword, right? We're doing so much in virtual reality to try to simulate and make you believe you're in this experience without audio that would be completely impossible, right? You wouldn't have that connection to the real world, right? So any tools that we have to trick your senses into believing that you're there, we have to use to our, you know, to our full ability. And really all those things come together to form what I like to think of as the atmosphere of the game. The visuals and the sound effects and the music and anything else that we can jam in there really contribute and make the experience what it is.
You could take any frame of Until You Fall and turn it into like a Perturbator or a Mega Drive cover album.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah, you guys nailed it, right? Like it's another aspect of input, right? It's another avenue for you to just feel something, right? Yeah. And oftentimes it can do so much. It doesn't like override, you know, feel or sight, you know, it like contributes to it. So because it creates this equation of senses, right? It just like, it's so important. Dwayne, I'm kind of stunned that people are like, now audio. Like, I'm like, what? What do you mean now? Like, I still have, it is really weird. I have sounds from like games I played on the NES that I still, you know, associate with that experience. That's just a sound. So I'm stunned to hear that. I wonder where. I'd like to read that article. Like, hey, we should pay attention. It's like, you have been. Everyone has been. But
yeah. I'll have to look them up of what I read to send it to you. Yeah, and maybe it was it might be more of the general, you know, entertainment is like the importance of sound in game design. You know, it was like, okay, well, everybody else really knows that, and so the fact you're bringing it up, like, yeah, it was super interesting.
I definitely think it deserves highlighting. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? I study it more. I agree, you know, but yeah.
And to your point, Kwamé, I actually Adam's our live chat moderator, so thank you, Adam. I linked your dev at a desk whenever you were working on the augments, and everybody loved the how you worded what you were doing. Actually, MH, thank you for watching. MH asks, yeah, any juicy news today? And I know that they're just referring to your dev at a desk of
I respect
making
that.
the augments, the crushing that just feel juicy, feel powerful.
Gotta feel juicy.
Because you think about it, if you just grabbed it and it just disappeared, there's no like feel of the power up. And like you said, it doesn't take away or overpower anything. It just complements to everything that's going on. So
Yep.
And so let's see, we'll go through a couple of the questions. So Adam, I know I didn't link Justin's blog post about the audio, but I know you're awesome, and so you might have already found it. So Sky asked, how did you arrive at the Unravel's particular aesthetic? For those who haven't played Until You Fall, that's what the enemies are called. They're part of this unraveled civilization. Superworm Gaming also asked, how do you get the idea for the Until You Fall art style, by the way? So if we can find the link to that blog post and put it in the live chat, that will answer all of those questions. And I think we had one more before we go off. Oh, yeah, Impatient asks, and we can get really kind of technical with this really quick. How Hey, he's one of our Discord modders, by the way, so this is why he's asking. How do the animated glowing textures for the Unraveled work in Until You Fall? So we don't have to get super technical, but if you can, give him or give them some type of guidance, that'd be great.
Kwamé, I'll let you take that one. That's probably closest to your discipline.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's a type of material that uses what we call panning, right? So, there'll be a couple of textures that we have that are, overlaid onto that mesh. I believe that's a mesh. You're talking about like the internal, like the insides of the Unravel, is a mesh, and it's just emissive. It's just glowing, right? And so I paint a couple of textures that are panning, right? And they're tiled. So if you just pan them off, they kind of match. And so they make a cool pattern that just kind of like continues to warp, almost like if you've ever looked at water, that's kind of like undulating, or caustics, like light when it hits the water, that kind of like pattern that just constantly undulates and moves. We can make those, and then we can move them at an axis, right? So they can move vertically or horizontally or at an angle. So we just make that, we kind of emulate that and put that in on the texture with the glowing, right? So it creates that kind of like interesting moving undulating light that's underneath. And because of all of the interesting armor and all those bits, all the lattice that's on top, it just becomes this like light that's seeing through all of that, right? So the contrast is what brings your eye to it. And then when you get close is when you can see, oh man, there's something moving in there, right? So we wanted to make sure that it moved just to add a little bit of flavor, that's really my thing. Like you said, juicy, right? I want you to be able to look like the next level deep and go, what? So yeah.
Yeah, and you can study it up close if you look at your virtual forearms. So
yeah, yep.
Good stuff. So we really dived into just a lot of your discipline already, but let's take a step back. And what got you guys interested in being an artist, in generally, and games specifically? And Greg, how about you start us off?
Sure. So I have like a lot of inspirations from cartoons and other media that I was exposed to way too young as a kid. Things like Neon Genesis Evangelion and Akira, and a lot of like kind of spooky or crazy giant robot anime when I was a kid, and that always made me really interested in like really heady sort of interesting like stories and art. And I feel like video games are probably like the best outlet for that kind of thing. You can the stories that you can tell in video games are unlike anything else because there's that interactive component, and I just really liked being able to give people the opportunity to have experiences that are unlike things that they experience in life. But over time, that has sort of kind of simmered down a little bit. And now I just like making really cute things and things that make people smile, because I realize that the emotion that I want people to have is, I want them to feel good and warm inside. So that's kind of, I think that being an artist is an ever evolving sort of, it's a river, it's ever evolving, ever shifting. So that's it.
Poetic. No, I felt you 100%. And yes, check out Greg's art. It's adorable.
Thank you.
Right, how about you, Kwamé? What got you started?
Oh man, so I feel like art was in a way something that I liked doing naturally as a kid. I didn't know why I did it. I just kind of did it, and my dad did some drawing and stuff like that, so it was just something we did together. And then as I kept, as I got older and older, it was a thing that I just kind of kept doing. I just liked expressing things visually. I played instruments. I still have some instruments back there. So like the expression was important, so I think games, just like Greg, right? Games were something that I just loved when I was a kid. And it was the idea that I could control and be part of this thing that was so fantastic and didn't really move without me. Like it needed me to incorporate, to be part of it, for it to move forward. And then you could see all just the different things you could express in games was so exciting. and I loved the fantasy. I loved all the different genres it could cover. It was a place where people could be really like expressive, like in magazines or like comic books, but not technically restrained to those things. It could also still allow you to connect, just like Greg said. So all those things, I loved all of that. For me, I think it was a bit of a confusing path to get to where I got as far as VFX goes, because I didn't know how to make games. Like, it was just like, what? How do you do this? So I just kept drawing comic books and doing paintings and stuff like that. When I was a kid in high school, I did a lot of painting. I did a lot of like chalk pastel stuff. I just did anything I could to just do art. And I actually did computer science, and then I got into animation, and I was like, I don't like this. It's cool, but like, it's not my thing. So I think for me, I just kept pushing, because I knew that video games is really the passion, right? Like, video games is what I really wanted to do. So I just kind of kept pushing to find my way through. Ended up doing texturing and world building and lighting. There's so many aspects that I like about making game art, So it wasn't necessarily the hard part. The hard part wasn't doing it, It was because I loved doing all art. But finding VFX was like was an interesting like revelation for me. Because that incorporated really emphasizing on the important moments and making those moments as strong as possible, right? As effective and as just powerful as possible. And that was the thing that I was like, okay, that I want to do that, all the time. And that's where I'm at now.
Good stuff. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think I followed a fairly similar path to Kwamé, right? I grew up just doing art for fun as a kid, and was heavily involved as much as was available in high school and all that. And I guess how I got towards games, I mean, I was always like a PC gamer growing up. I was like that kid that didn't have a console, and so I did all stuff on PC instead. And it's weird. I've kind of veered in and out of games before I finally settled in the industry itself. I hadn't really thought about games as a career, but like when Doom and Doom 2 came out, you could, make mods for that and replace all of the art with your own art. And that was like a revelation to me, that I could turn all of the weapons in Doom into Batman weapons or something like that. So I dabbled with that. I did some computer science in high school, and that allowed me to make a few little things. But eventually, I was off to art school, and I actually went for animation. And the goal was not necessarily to end up in the games industry. I was looking for really anything animation related at all. And I got an opportunity at Schell Games. And so I've been here ever since. And so I did come in for animation originally. And I've kind of touched on every possible discipline outside of maybe audio and UI at some point in time. And I did a lot of work in environment art. I still do a lot of work in environment art whenever, especially when I have small teams, and even in my art director role, you need to be hands-on on those smaller teams. So that's sort of the role that I end up jumping into a lot. But yeah, I moved towards art direction in general because I can't pick. Because I like to be involved and have some kind of influence over a lot of different disciplines. So that's how I ended up there, I guess.
Well, yeah. Justin, go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna say, I can't imagine not making something. I can't imagine like a day goes by where I don't make something,
Yeah. Word.
So you guys provided the perfect segment to our next question. So we'll do one more question from our outline, and then we'll start answering a bunch of these questions. But just so everybody knows where we're going around it, there are so many different aspects to game art, just what everybody was saying. And so can you explain why being diverse in your talents in as being a game artist. What is that good? Yeah, is that good for somebody who is looking to be into the game industry as an artist? And if so, how you guys talked about how you jumped from thing to thing. How did you do that? Like, what was the process behind you looking at? It's like, oh well, environment art's kind of cool, but that's okay. Animation, yeah, that's great, but like you said, Kwame, I don't want to do that. Yeah. So, how did you guys, make that process from jump to jump, and just to make and then to put a hat on it with Justin? How did you make that jump? To like art direction. And I know you do it with you're more hands-on with small teams, but in your career you really have moved up a little bit more to the direction, so you're not hands-on as much as you like to be, but you're helping these a lot of other artists to just make their stuff look fantastic. So that's a big question. I'm just saying, how diverse are you, or why is it good to be diverse as a games artist within the art? And then how did you guys choose to jump from thing to thing? I think I
I'll
watered
answer
that down
first if you guys don't mind, because otherwise I'm going to forget like half of the question that Dwayne just asked.
Fine.
Let the others struggle. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I guess most targeted, working backwards in your question, right?
Yes.
Art direction was something that came up over time, right? And it was a slow introduction based off of other leadership roles, right? So I had been working pretty heavily in environment art, and so I ended up being an environment lead. We had one project that was particularly large, and I had probably 10 people working under me at that time on various aspects of environment art. And so from there, a lot of that job is, project management, people skills, making sure you can stick to a schedule, work with other leaders on the team, that kind of thing. And it just all worked as training to get me to the point where I felt confident saying, okay, yeah, I've worked with all these other disciplines. There's stuff that I understand here. And I was able to say, here's the things I don't understand. Here's the stuff that I'll need to rely on the team members for, that kind of thing. I started off with small projects. Until You Fall was definitely probably the largest one that I've done art direction for. The team size has fluctuated greatly over time, just depending on what kind of mode we're in any given month. But at its largest, it probably had close to 30 people on the team. Not all artists, but just developers in general. So that's that was sort of an organic growth towards direction. But more broadly, the question about there's always this tug of war between being a generalist and being a specialist, right? And I really think it depends on where you want to end up in the industry, right? What kind of studios you want to work with, right? There's some that are very much looking for very targeted jobs, right? And then there's other places like Schell Games where it's actually fairly beneficial to have a wide range of skills, right? That there's still, even projects that I work on now, there's just such a wide range of things that come up that we just may not have the perfect person and the perfect specialty to be able to jump onto this project. Especially some of our stuff where we're working on prototypes and that kind of stuff that's very, very fast, doesn't have the largest budget, and we just need people that can get the stuff done, right? So there's a lot of work at Schell that really feels like game jam sort of material at times, right? And having a wide range of skills to be able to jump into that and help out, even so it's even like slightly out of your discipline, is pretty useful. So.
Okay, you want me to go next? The first one was how important is it to have kind of like a diversity of skill, right? Or
Yeah, I think Justin narrowed it down for me. The
yeah,
importance or the ability to be a generalist versus a specialist.
okay, yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of ways art requires you to be like a really good translator, right? Like a really good understanding of like this needs to be this, and these people need to understand this aspect of it, right? So the more that you can understand of what that thing is, the more angles of it that you understand, the better, like the more thorough you can be about that thing being the right message or the right visual, the right sound, so I think the more, I mean, I think it's great to be able to understand, certainly be able to understand the aspects of the process, that your mates may have, right? Like if you're working with an environment artist, if you're working with a prop artist, if you're working next to a UI artist or whatever, all of the more you know about what they do, the more that you can collaborate, right? The more you can communicate clearly. And so like that, the collaboration just makes everything richer and better. So it's absolutely great. It's great if you can do them. But it's also just great if you know, right? If you just understand a little bit more, you learn a little bit of the process, or you just listen to your peers, or you read more, or read blogs and do tutorials, whatever it is you do, So yeah, being a generalist helps, but just knowing helps too. And then the other part was, what was the other part?
The other part was, how did you choose your path? Pretty much.
Oh yeah, my path is wild. Like I don't know how it chose me. I often say that about VFX artists, and we are chosen. We're like, a wizard, a magic wizard kind of goes, you, and you're like, what? And you just get whisked up in a god ray, and with some and then you just all of a sudden you're like, I'm a VFX artist, right? Like I don't. There's a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of VFX artists that honestly were like, how did we get here? But it is it's a weird mix of a bunch of different disciplines, right? It's like a little bit of modeling, a little bit of animation, a little bit of man, if you could do audio, be a VFX artist, that would be incredible. But for me, it was definitely not straight. It was definitely not the thing I knew I wanted to do, right? It was something that for me was something that ended up being a need on a project I was on, and no one could do it. And I was just like, man, I don't know, that sounds cool. And I started watching some tutorials, and I started doing it. At the time I was doing a lot more level layout, world building, and I think I was doing, and lighting at the time. And the VFX part was just something that we needed. And I just started learning it and trying it. And then I was like, man, I think I kind of dig this. And I kept doing it, and I kept adding my lighting to it. Right? And I was like, wait a minute, I can make this thing bright. I can make a muzzle flash, and the muzzle flash. Wait, this is awesome. And I remember actually having to convince my boss that, like, no, I really want to do this. And they're like, but we need you to do that stuff. And I'm like, no, I need to do this. So it was,
I've been chosen.
I've been chosen. Yeah, right. Like, you see the light, it's calling me. Like I really like just followed it. Right. So it really was kind of organic. It really was. I did not think I would ever be this passionate about VFX. I really didn't even know much about it before I did it. So, and I just kept doing it on the side, doing it at work, and I love it. So it was very organic.
It's been really convenient if there's like a sorting hat kind of thing that they could, plop on us when we first get to the studio.
Yeah, that would be. It's what it felt like.
How about you, Greg?
Well, I definitely never expected to wind up doing the things that I do currently. I definitely am a generalist in the sense that, like, I do environments, I do props, I do characters. I've even had the opportunity to do like audio and write the soundtrack for a game called Arcade Spirits, which I never thought that I'd ever be able to do in the history of ever. And
so good.
Thank you. But it really just was like an interest. Like, I've always liked how games and movies and all sorts of media just makes me feel, and how do you convey that feeling to other people. And I learned a lot about like like level design and set dressing and how to make an environment feel a certain way. And then I was like, okay, well, I want people to inhabit this, and how do I incorporate that? And so I started learning, character modeling, and then having the opportunity to just write music, which I mean at its core is just all is just emotion, was really cool. But at this point, I think my role at the studio is just the person that they throw at things to make things go away. It's just like, we have a problem over here, just give it to Greg, he'll figure it out. So it's I spend a lot of time like in Unity and in Unreal, like learning optimization stuff. And so it's just sort of like, at this point, I'm just like this big hodgepodge of things. But I'm like, if you said like, all right, we're going to make the next Call of Duty game, like, Greg, you're going to be making guns, it's going to be like, oh God, I don't know if I could do that. Yeah, because I just spent a lot of time focusing on being able to finish things and put things away and kind of help kind of get things across the finish line.
Okay, so we'll call you the fixer. I like that.
I like it.
Yeah, please send in Greg. He'll fix it.
Yeah, he'll get it done.
Good stuff. All right, so let's get to some of these questions. We have a lot of really good ones. Let's see. So let's start with. So I'm going to combine both of Night to Killers or Night Die Killers questions. Thank you for coming to the stream, Night Die Killer. We talked on the Discord, so I'm glad you were able to make it. How do you come up for ideas on what to draw? Any helpful tips you have noticed?
I mean, I mean, you kind of have to. I think intuition is strong here, right? Like inspiration is just intuition, and inspiration, I think, is something that you kind of get used to following as an artist, right? You at first it's weird, and you kind of then sometimes you don't trust it, and sometimes you don't. You're like, no, maybe I just thought it was cool because my that person talked about it or that person talked about it. But like sometimes seeing the beauty in something tiny or big is like the thing that pulls you to draw it or draw something like it, or maybe even I oftentimes tell people, like, don't feel ashamed for tracing something, because you're just trying to embrace it, right? You're like, yeah, obviously you don't charge someone for something, you don't steal someone's art, but like just doing something for fun is still like a way to express yourself, right? Express the way you feel about that thing. So like chasing down an inspiration, right? Finding inspiration and just like sitting with it, I think is a great way. It could be anything. Could be a chair. Could be a plant. It doesn't really matter. I think you could just draw it. Yeah.
Okay, so in his second question, which will loop in the other two, have you ever liked to or thought of set things on fire or blow up fireworks so you have a better understanding of how you would want things to look? I'm sure a lot of research goes into your art. So do you blow stuff up for inspiration, pretty much?
I didn't blow anything up, but I had the opportunity to do some photogrammetry like 2 years ago. And if you don't know what photogrammetry is, it's taking pictures of something in real life, and then you convert those pictures to a 3D model. And there's lots of games that have come out, like What Remains of Edith Finch, that have used photogrammetry, or Star Wars Battlefront. Those games have used photogrammetry. And one of the things that I did a photogrammetry of was this big pile of snow. It was just a interesting shape, and it had interesting material, but trying to make snow feel like snow in 3D is so complicated, because it's all of it's water, it's crystallized water, and has like a weird way that light reflects off of it. So spent a lot of time sitting outside the studio looking at snow and taking pictures of snow, and people walking by me and being like, why is that guy taking pictures of snow? So definitely doing like a lot of research. There's definitely times where I'm walking down the street and I see bricks on the ground, and I'm like, those are cool bricks, I'm going to take a picture of those.
Yeah, that hits a little close to home. I've definitely pulled over on the side of the PA Turnpike, much to my family's chagrin, and stopped to like take photos of cool rock formations and things like that.
Yep.
With traffic just blowing past me and whatnot. So yeah, that's a very familiar thing. I mean, reference is everything, right? I also don't have any specific examples of blowing anything up, but yeah, same deal. I don't think I do any art without having some kind of reference. Sometimes it's just Google image searching stuff. Sometimes it's just stuff that I've, taken pictures of, completely unrelated, that then I remember, oh yeah, I've got access to this because I saw this a long time ago. And sometimes it's, I guess before working on Until You Fall, I'd gone to on a vacation up to Vermont and done a lot of hiking up there in the woods and whatnot. So I was like very, very much in a bendy tree sort of mode, and had all this photo reference that I had taken up there, of interestingly shaped trees, and that definitely made its way into the game. So it's always, it's always drawing on something from experiences in your life and stuff that you've encountered. So much to the point that both of my kids don't make art without pulling up reference and stuff.
Wow.
At this point, because it's been so hammered into their heads.
Wow. It's impressive.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Emil asks, what's most important when immersing the player? Is it modeling or texturing?
That's an interesting question. I can talk about this from the perspective of like VR games, because I think that's going to be a bit different from your traditional like first person shooter or like action adventure game. But for I Expect You to Die, material is decently important, and I think that players feel that when they're in those spaces. When you're in like a nice space and you look around and you have all of like in the first I Expect You to Die game, and you're in the car in the first level, and you have like Zoraxis's really nice car with like the wood and the metals and the fabric on the chairs, and then there's this like grungy exterior plane, and so like there's that, you feel like you're in this like special place and this like fancy thing. And I feel like the lighting and the texturing winds up being the thing that winds up selling those spaces the most. Because if you're just in like a big gray box, it doesn't really convey that until you get lighting and shadows and textures and color on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're so intertwined that it's really hard to separate. And there's also a fine line between model and texture, right? When you're looking as a player at what is the texture of the surface, some of it might be coming from the topography of the model itself, and some of it might be what we're faking with textures, right? But it's all about relaying, physical changes in the material, right? To Greg's point, like believability of material, I think it was super important for that project. And in general has been pretty important in VR, I feel. But it really is a balance between the two. And you can have a project where you lean more heavily and put more of your detail into the models themselves. And sometimes that can be even more efficient than doing really, really detailed, texture work. And then sometimes, they're dead simple models that more of the detail is being poured in through the textures. So it's a stylistic thing, I think, is what it comes down to, and a question. Well, it balance between the style that you choose for the game and what is going to work for performance on the hardware that you're working on.
Right, platform.
There are some weapons in Until You Fall that are heavier in physical reality. I see like the small knife and like the big sword, and I don't know what happens to my controller, but somehow that controller gets heavier when I pick up that bigger sword. It 100%.
I won't reveal the secret here.
So speaking on the weapons, a Blaze Wand 07. I love the names. These are great.
Blaze Wand, good name.
What did you use to model the weapons, specifically for Until You Fall?
Sure. So we use Maya for almost all the modeling in the studio. I think some people have dabbled in Blender, and there's occasional project where we get a file coming in from 3ds Max or something like that that we need to access. But pretty much we're a Maya studio. It's just the way it's been for a long time, and I think at this point it's about we have infrastructure built up around around that program, and we have tools written for it and that kind of thing. But there's a much larger pipeline that Maya is what we use to make the actual game models that you're using in game that we then wrap textures around. But there's a whole pipeline, what's usually called the high to low pipeline, that starts usually with ZBrush, where we're doing really, really detailed sculpts. And then all that detail gets combined onto the game model and baked down to a texture. And oftentimes, I think, at least in our case with Until You Fall, we've done that work in Substance Painter. And so all these programs kind of work together to generate assets that we can then bring into Unity or Unreal. In the case of Until You Fall, it was Unity. And then once you're in there, you're doing even more tweaking. You're writing shaders and tweaking the properties of the shader in a material to bring everything together into one cohesive whole.
Good stuff. Let's see. Let's go for one or more questions. Let's see. So, we talked briefly about how the art kind of depends on the platform, and Justin, I think you touched about this again on that really detailed article that you talked about with art. So remind me if you did, and so we can skip this question. But
Okay.
Syvern asks, what is involved and what do you have to bear in mind when porting a game to different platforms or developing for less powerful platforms?
Sure. So I did talk a bit about that in the blog post.
Okay.
With Until You Fall in mind specifically, but more broadly, it really, really depends on the hardware, right? And there's a lot of testing that happens up front. Usually just kind of like filling the screen with one type of object or another, and seeing what the hardware can do when you stress test it and push it to its limits. And once you kind of establish those limits, then that helps inform the decisions you need to make on the project. Is there limitations on texture size or other things that fill up memory? Are there limitations on how many polygons you can draw on screen at once? Are you limited on draw calls, which is basically, in its most simplistic form, how many types of objects can be drawn out there at once? So there's all sorts of questions, and you may find yourself bound by one of those things or several of those things more than another, right? And the job is just figuring out what that case is for each project.
Yeah, to kind of just add to that a little bit, for Until You Fall and for the first I Expect You to Die, those were games that were developed for the Rift and the Vive first, and then they were ported to the Oculus, to the Quest. But for I Expect You to Die 2, we were kind of focusing on the Quest first, since that is, the biggest, headset that is currently out, and trying to preserve the visual quality of the first game to the Quest was pretty challenging. but was a lot of fun to try and solve. I guess it was hard, but it was fun.
It's tough work. Yeah, it's tough work.
Good stuff. So let's get back to it. So we have a couple more questions. We can save some of them to the end. We have just a couple minutes left. So we'll jump around a little bit. So for people who are trying to hone their skills as a game artist, do you think that they should participate in game jams, whether it's physically or virtually? And if so, why? And let's start with Greg.
Absolutely, participate in game jams. If you want to make games, then you should make games. If you have games like Skyrim that you love, try and mod them. So many games have the ability to mod them now. But I do the global game jam every year, and every year I wind up learning new things. It's a really fantastic opportunity to be able to work with people that you might not work with, or make things that you might not make otherwise. But just keep on making things and showing the things that you make to other people who make things. And yeah, that's pretty much it, is just be creative. I think that's the best way to be able to be better at being creative.
Yeah, great answer. And I think this ties back a little bit to like the thing we talked about earlier about kind of like diverse inspiration, right? Like just the more you game jam, the more people you come into contact with, the more you collaborate with people that you maybe didn't know, or in a way like those restrictions, because the timeline's so short, people get real creative because they have to fit this thing in a tiny little space, so yes, and most definitely. I think the thing that Greg said first, if you want to be a game artist, make games, make game art. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that.
Good stuff. Let's keep going. Oh, this is a nice one. So you guys have worked on a bunch of different platforms, software. So what's interesting about switching from a Unity or Unreal, or trying to port models from Maya into different software? So what's something interesting that you ran into that like, oh, I didn't know this could happen, or I didn't know I had to do that to do this?
I think
because they're all geniuses and new, that's fine too.
No. I mean, I think so. I think as VFX artists, we're constantly kind of like pinging all of these different software suites to figure out how we can make things cooler or different or more interesting. What functionality is there to figure out how we can unlock this crazy thing we're thinking about. And I think at times we, it's like having a different set of tools, right? Like sometimes you'll find a way to make the thing that's in your head, but you'll make it a little different if you have this other tool, right? And it's not to say that you couldn't make it with the other tool. It's just that this is how you made it with this one, right? So sometimes making things in a different engine, making things in Cascade in Unreal, or in Niagara in Unreal, or in Shuriken in Unity, or making something with Embergen and bringing it back, or Houdini, like all of those different things might result in different ways that you make the thing. You know what I mean? So that happens all the time. Like sometimes I'll be like, all right, I'm over here. I'm gonna try making this thing. I'm running into that problem. I'm gonna go this way and then this way. And if I use that package, I didn't do that. There's all sorts of different reasons why. I don't know why you're laughing, Dwayne.
Because you said something. He's like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I believe you. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm sure a lot of people feel like that too. They're like, I don't know, but it sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance, right, between
you
can get really good at one piece of software, and that's great. You can turn out really amazing stuff that way, but there's constantly new stuff coming out. Constantly, the paradigms for our pipelines are changing, right? I mean, every 5 years or so, there's some huge shift, right? There was a huge shift when Substance came onto the scene, for instance, right? And suddenly, oh my gosh, you could paint your textures just directly on the model and have this whole suite of things to generate realistic materials and apply them, right on the model. That was fantastic. Before that, it was, oh, we're actually sculpting high detailed stuff in ZBrush. That was a thing that wasn't being done before. We had to just paint our textures in Photoshop and apply them in this very, very abstract way. So you always have to be open to new pipelines coming along and the software that enables those new pipelines. But there is this tension between being ready for that next big shift, but also putting enough energy into the programs that you are using, not spreading yourself so thin that you can't really master the stuff that you are working in. And I don't have a great answer about how to walk that balance. It's just something you got to figure out.
Yeah, you guys just do so many amazing things and so many different platforms. So it's you guys are just fantastic at what you do. Let's see. So we have 4 minutes left. Most of these questions are until you fall specific, so we can answer those in the Discord. So we'll hold those questions and we'll answer them in the Until You Fall Discord. Night Die Killer asks, do you offer any shadowing opportunities for high school seniors? Keep emailing the info at Schell Games for that type of information. Whenever we return to office, there's a lot of conversations about how we can incorporate not just undergrad for college, but also high school. How can we get people in the game industry pipeline as early as they would want to? And so we're still having those conversations. Nothing to announce, but keep asking, and so that will make sure our studio has an appropriate answer for that. Let's see. So I think we will end with a final thought for you three. We'll start with Kwamé. If you could give a prospective game artist only one piece of advice for a career in game design and game art, or just in the games industry, what would it be?
Do they have a specification on type of art or no? Just
Nope.
Game art.
That broad game art category.
Broad, yeah. I would say study like crazy, right? Like play a lot of games, do a lot of things, right? Like watch movies, all that kind of stuff, right? Be inspired by all those things. I would say you definitely want to find the thing that inspires you and that you're really good at, right? Like find the thing that you're like, I think I'm good at that. I want to keep doing that. Study other artists that do that and be inspired by them, right? Like try their stuff, try to emulate some of that and bring it into your work. And I mean, you just can't really stop. You got to love what you do. So keep studying, keep practicing, and join the game jams, learn from other people.
Cool. Let's do Greg.
It took me 15 years, I think, to learn this, but I think the best advice that I could give anyone is like, don't compromise yourself. Make the things that make you happy. Make the things that you want to make, because that's going to be the best art that you can, and you only have so much time to be able to make art. So if you enjoy making, cool VFX for, swords that are all made of ice, make stuff that you enjoy, because otherwise it's going to feel artificial. You're not going to like it. You're going to burn yourself out. That's not to say that you'll be able to do that every day for the rest of your life on every project you ever work on, but I didn't realize how happy I could be making art until I found the thing that I love doing. So make sure that you focus on that.
And Justin, bring us home.
Well, I mean, I'll loop us back to reference, but not necessarily just visual reference. And Kwamé, you already touched on this a little bit. There's just so many resources available these days. You know, when I was starting out, and I know when Kwamé was starting out too, the internet is not what it was or what it is today. And there's so many amazing communities out there where people specialize in everything you could possibly imagine with regards to game art. And so there's video tutorials and forums and you know, there's free critiques out there. It's get yourself out there, start getting involved with these communities. You know, just try making stuff, and when you run into trouble, reach out to these communities that you've joined. Reach out and find tutorials. The stuff is out there. So
good stuff. Okay, so don't leave yet. We have some announcements, and then we're going to thank our artists for what a wonderful conversation. We could have done this for 2 hours. Hopefully, whenever we get back to the studio, we can have some longer streams. So thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us. So announcements. Until You Fall. Until You Fall is coming to Viveport. It'll be available later in April. I think we announced a date, but sometime in April. If the date's not coming, the date isn't on the coming soon page, you can check our Until You Fall social media to make sure that date was announced. I think Justin's checking for me to make sure that we can officially announce it. So until he gives me the confirmation. Schell Games virtual open house. You can actually meet a lot of our dev team and our senior leadership. That is May 13th. So you can go on our website, schellgames.com, to look for that information. Or if you're in Pittsburgh, you can look at the Remake Learning Days and remakelearning.org and to RSVP. I believe we're doing some type of Zoom link or virtual conference link, and you're able to RSVP and have more of these really interesting conversations with our fantastic dev team.
I'll be there.
Make sure you use, what's up?
I'll be there.
Kwamé will be there. Greg will be there. Justin, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? April 15th, by the way.
What's up?
April 15th.
Woohoo! It wasn't out. Okay, thank you, Justin.
That was officially announced.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, I just had a blank. It's like, oh man, did we announce it? So yeah. So thank you for that. So make sure you subscribe, enable your notifications so you can see all the videos that we post on our YouTube channel. In the April edition, we are going to be interviewing our producers, the ones that make sure that our dev teams make the games on time and within budget. And so it'll be really interesting to talk with them about how they do that, how they work with creative teams, and especially with people in different disciplines, how they get everybody to mesh to make something amazing. So that will be April 28th at 6 p.m., like we do all of our dinners. So thank you so much. And for the questions, again, that we didn't get a chance to answer, we'll answer in our respective Discords. So the I Expect You Die Discord and the Until You Fall Discord. There are channels for Dinner with the Devs, and we'll answer whatever questions that we didn't get a chance to get to there. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did. Kwamé, Greg, Justin, thank you very much. Mac for the tech production. Adam for the live chat, and Jill and Allie for the support. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you all. Peace.